I was listening to something called the Corbett Report earlier on, and a podcast called What Everyone's Missing About Brexit, and I'll put the link in the show notes. And they were talking about the birth story of the EU, as if somehow it was of any relevance to what anybody who was voting in the Brexit referendum was voting about. And curiously enough, it was quite amusing that in this podcast someone mentioned about the voters not knowing these things and not caring about these things, and the implication being that they were too stupid. Well, everybody's heard the narrative of people were too stupid about what they were voting about in the Brexit referendum anyway. So that's of no surprise that. But the point was, well, it's not that they're too stupid, but they don't really care about any of this nonsense that the Corbett report were talking about with regard to German nationalists at the Red House or um, whatever else they were talking about. Because what's they're overlooking, and amusingly, this chap Corbett said that he would disagree with the people who were voting for Brexit on political grounds, assuming that the people who were voting for Brexit were voting about immigration. Presumably that's what he's talking about, because presumably he is of the opinion that people who were voting for Brexit were voting because they were right wing. But the thing that he has clearly overlooked in all his conspiracy theory research is that Brexit and Legsit, the left wing alternative, or the left wing version of the Brexit argument, is about sovereignty. And it's about sovereignty in a very specific way. It's about sovereignty as was laid out by people like Tony Benn, who you can't describe as a right winger. And he basically said that the essence of a democracy is that you should be able to get rid of the people who you elect and have more say in who you elect, but principally there should be a mechanism by which you can get rid of them. And that simple idea is essentially what people are voting about. It's not about globalism. It's not about anti-immigration. And I'm not saying that those are not factors. But the point was that when people saw what was going on and had no way of actually getting rid of those people, well, they then voted. But not in Brexit, because Brexit is the end of that voting. And I'm not even talking about the voting in the referendum, because you only need to look at the way the voting was going over the past 10 or 15 years in EU referendums, and I emphasise in EU referendums because the point is that in general elections there is a certain amount of tribalism and a certain amount of seriousness as to who you vote for. And well, I say it's a very serious thing as to who you vote for, but voting for MEPs who have no power to change anything, and where you can genuinely register your disapproval of a parliament that you don't agree with in the first place, when you notice that people are voting for UKIP, and at one election, because of a very specific set of circumstances, the BNP, right, and so that the people who are anti the Brexit vote or whatever can portray those people that were voting as racists, when one needs to look at a far wider picture to understand why the BNP were elected in that election, you can see that Brexit is the culmination of a voting pattern over 10 or 15 years. And you can see that if you really want to look at it, it goes back way before that. It goes right back to the 1975 referendum, and even before that to the way in which Britain got into the EU and what was said and the debates that follow from there on in. It's not about this referendum. It is the culmination, the same as what we are seeing now with people saying, oh, well, we're not actually, Brexit hasn't worked because of da 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 da. Well, yes, because we're a month into another process, which is to get ourselves out of the EU. And I only mention this because I'm a bit tired of people using Brexit, the Brexit vote, to attach to various hobby horses. I noticed that the Brexit vote has been attached to all sorts of campaigns and all sorts of things in ways that it is simply not applicable. And I only mention the Corbett report because I happened to listen to it, and it was all very entertaining stuff. And yes, I learned this thing and that there's this intellectual idea. But the fact of the matter is, when they said that the people who were voting didn't understand these things, they did. It's you that don't understand. It's you that have not considered what it is that people are actually voting about. Okay, this poem is called Commuion. They who wait, who sit outside, do not know the weight of that which lifts a lark in summer, and so it was with him. Show me on the stones, show me on the scrape of digestion in the belly of the dragon, show me in the bursted bubble of the brook. Feed me words antiqued, feathered in the patina of age, and stained with the grease of 1,000 thumbs. For I can see it in the reflected eyes of orgasm, but its shade eludes my probing heart, and I harden here in fear for the unembraced guest. But he has come none the less. Curiosity at remove from the mechanical act of rising and standing and kneeling in time. And he asks me, as we leave, why I do not burst. How can a ship so small still float?